Breaking news: the number of hostages traded between Israel and Hamas has increased. A fragile ceasefire between Hamas and Israel released additional prisoners and captives as international mediators in Qatar sought to prolong it for a fifth day. On Tuesday, Israel announced that 10 Israeli citizens and 2 Thai nationals had been released and returned to Israel by Hamas, bringing the total number of captives set free to 86 out of approximately 240 individuals taken to the Gaza Strip following Hamas attacks on Israel on October 7. Following this, 30 more Palestinians were released from Israeli prisons, bringing the total number of inmates set free to 180. A total of 15 Palestinian women and 12 children, 12 from Jerusalem and 3 from the occupied West Bank, were among those who were released. Similarly, 15 women and 10 children were released from the West Bank. The first 4-day pause, during which further prisoner exchanges will take place, will be extended for an extra 2 days, according to an agreement that Qatar announced late on Monday. On Wednesday night, there will be one more exchange before the truce ends. Nonetheless, the heads of the Israeli and American intelligence services were in Qatar, a crucial mediator with Hamas, to deliberate an extension of the ceasefire and the release of additional prisoners. With the brutal attacks in Israel by Hamas and the fierce retaliation that followed, as well as the kiss that sparked a revolt in Spanish football, these were the 10 events that defined a turbulent 2023 conflict between Israel and Gaza. The worst attack on Israeli soil occurred on October 7, when hundreds of gunmen from Hamas crossed the border from Gaza. The casualties tally was around 1,200, with the majority of casualties being civilians. The attack also left Israel traumatized and stunned the world at large. After Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promised to destroy Hamas, the Israeli military bombarded the tightly packed Palestinian territory with airstrikes and then launched a ground offensive, leveling entire neighborhoods. There is increasing pressure on Israel from around the world to halt its offensive as the destruction and death toll in Gaza continue to rise. A 4-day truce is agreed upon by the two sides. 7 weeks into the war, nearly 13,000 Palestinians, including thousands of children, have been killed, according to the Hamas-run government of Gaza. Emotional reunions occur when Hamas exchanges 150 Palestinian prisoners, all of whom are women or minors, for the release of 50 female hostages. The ceasefire was extended by 2 days by the two parties on November 27. The sluggish resistance in Ukraine, Kyiv, 16 months after Russia's invasion of its neighbor, has trained new recruits and amassed billions in powerful weapons made in the West. Now it launches a much-anticipated counteroffensive. However, Russia's formidable defensive lines remain largely unaffected by the resistance. Ukraine declares its first significant achievement in months, making advances along the Russian-held left bank of the Dnieper River in late November. However, it seems like both sides are still very entrenched as winter approaches. Catastrophic earthquakes: at least 56,000 people are killed in one of the deadliest earthquakes in a century in southeast Turkey. In the early hours of February 6, nearly 6,000 more are killed in a separate incident in Syria. The tragic 7.8 magnitude earthquake is best described by two images, one depicting a father clutching the hand of his 15-year-old daughter as she lies lifeless beneath a building that collapsed in Kahramanmaraş, the epicenter, and the other showing a mother rescuing her newborn child from the wreckage while the child is still umbilically connected to her deceased mother. The Atlas Mountains in Morocco are the epicenter of the country's deadliest earthquake, which strikes 7 months later, on September 8. There are about 3,000 casualties. Additional coups in Africa. Niger and Gabon are the newest countries to depose an elected president in 2023, adding to the string of coups that has marked a severe decline in democracy in Francophone Africa. This is the third instance in less than 2 years that a former African colony has sent French forces packing, and this time it was Niger that did it by expelling the French ambassador and counter-terrorism troops. Meanwhile, in August, the president of Gabon, Ali Bongo Ondimba, who is the heir to a 55-year-old ruling dynasty, is removed from office following a presidential election that the opposition and army deemed fraudulent. Strike in Hollywood in 2023. Writers in Hollywood go on strike in May to demand pay increases and restrictions on the use of generative AI in films, as the existential fear it causes spreads throughout the creative economy. Actors in Hollywood went on strike in July, citing concerns that artificial intelligence could be used to replicate their voices and appearances, as well as the fact that it is now nearly impossible for non-A-listers to make a decent living. The strike was the largest in Hollywood since the 1960s. After returning to work 2 months earlier, writers go on strike, causing hundreds of popular shows and films to be delayed until November, when studios and actors reach an agreement. Risk of fatal fires. The year comes to a fiery close as the climate monitor of the European Union predicts that 2023 will be the hottest on record. At least 115 people were killed in August by the deadliest U.S. wildfire in a century on the island of Maui. The fire was caused by a combination of factors, one of which was the worsening drought brought about by climate change. Residents and tourists alike were forced to flee the Greek islands of Rhodes and Corfu due to massive fires. However, when it came to the total area engulfed by flames, Canada stood tallest, with more than 18 million hectares of forest engulfed in flames. The moon, an uncharted territory in August of 2023, following days of a Russian lunar vehicle crash into the moon's surface. Rising star India became the first nation to successfully land an unmanned craft on the moon's south pole, escalating the space race. There is intense competition amongst nations to send astronauts back to the moon, even though Neil Armstrong of the United States was the first to set foot on the surface more than 50 years ago. By 2025, NASA hopes to have sent a crew on a mission, China by 2030, and India by 2040. Spanish kissing made mandatory. There will be scenes of ecstatic celebration back home after Spain beat England in the Women's Football World Cup final on August 20th in Sydney. Spanish football chief Luis Rubiales is found planting a kiss on the lips of captain Jenny Hermoso minutes after the game. Hermoso later described the kiss as an assault, and the initial elation soon turns into outraged. In the face of widespread condemnation, a rebellious Rubiales resigns, despite his claims that the kiss was voluntary. Caucasus migration. Following a lightning offensive that evicted the majority of the ethnic Armenian population from the mountainous region, Azerbaijan recaptured the breakaway Republic of Nagorno-Karabakh in September, marking the end of its 3-decade independence campaign. Because of the 2 wars that ethnic Armenian separatists have fought over the territory since the 1990s and the fear of violence and rule by Turkic-speaking Azerbaijanis, many Karabakh residents have fled to Armenia. Argentina sways to the right. Javier Milei, a libertarian wildcard candidate, won the election in November and promised to blow up the central bank, dollarize the economy, privatize health and education, and repeal abortion laws. This pushed Argentina even further to the right. As a result of decades of economic decline and double-digit inflation under the long-dominant Peronist, center-left coalition, the economist and TV pundit famous for his foul-mouthed rants against the political caste is riding high on a wave of fury. Some have compared his promise to restore Argentina to its golden age at the turn of the 20th century to Trump's Make America Great Again campaign slogan.